responsible marketing and the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, and why these are potentially really important for your efforts in responsible marketing. And this is very much a macro view, so the very big picture. And in this session, we're going to see if we can equip you with a very much a strategic overview of the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. And we're going to explore some high impact case studies where these proven frameworks have turned organizations' branding and communications in a responsible marketing framework into very actionable steps that they can use as part of the marketing mix. So for some people, the whole concept of SDGs is something that's a little bit out of touch, a little bit out of reach, but it doesn't have to be. And so this is what we're going to explore in this session, how you can make them super practical and actually consciously really why you should care about the SDGs. So let's take a little backward step, just kind of figure out what these things are. So there are 17 of them, these SDGs, and they were adopted by 193 countries to address global challenges by 2030. So they are a range of UN very, very high level goals. Almost you could call them sort of like the North Stars, if you like, in terms of directions that people can point their businesses, their activities, their organizations towards. And they cover a huge range of initiatives and issues. So they cover poverty, education, gender equality, climate action, and a whole host of other things. Now, this is going to be something that you can choose to do and you can choose not to do. They're very much in essence, really an optional choice. But for a lot of marketers in brands that are very much purpose-driven or value-led, aligning your branding and your communications with an SDG or more than one can be very much a way of saying, okay, look, we're on this particular path, and here's the context of that path in a sense of the bigger picture. So they allow you to position your brand and your messages and your marketing with very much a global kind of reality, if you like, of some of the challenges that we all face as we go about our daily lives, both professionally and personally. So there's some fundamentally good reasons why you should care about these. And it doesn't matter what size organization you are. Yes, if you're a large corporate, it's probably quite obvious which ones you might align with. But even as a micro business, having a clear strategy here that says, we are aligned with that particular SDG because for us, it is kind of part and parcel of the values that we hold. And you can see as we start to bring products and services to market, or we start to go down this kind of engagement with this group of people, this is the reason why we're in business. This is the reason and our focus for, providing these products and services as we go. So it's a really kind of high level strategic positioning here, which gives a context to what you do. So what we're needing to do really to kind of get things started is to see how the SDGs will connect to our brand strategy. And a lot of the time, and I'm sure if you're listening to your customers, you will know that your brand is being judged on its contribution and the value that it brings to something more than the products and services that you sell. So really your contribution to the community around you, to society in general, to the impact that you have on the planet, your carbon footprint, all of these other considerations that are the almost kind of the wrapper, if you like, around those purchase decisions that your customers are making. And responsible marketing aligns campaigns and messaging and marketing with the SDGs most relevant to the business model, to the audience that you're talking to, and also to your wider supply chain. So again, it's really important to think of this in a holistic sense. It's not just about you and your website and you and your brand and you and your promotions and campaigns. This really is fundamental to the way that you do business and the reason that you as a collection of people come together to do what you do. And so it is the organizations who you work with, so your suppliers, maybe your resellers, they're all part of this in terms of alignment with the right SDGs. So it's a broader thing than just a marketing decision. It's very much a business decision. So the idea really would be to map your current marketing strategy in its broadest sense across the SDGs using something like the SDG compass. You can have a little search on that one and go in and see whether that makes a difference. And that kind of helps you to forge an alignment really between maybe one or two SDGs and your brand strategy. So again, that's an important kind of consideration to really be thinking, as I said earlier, holistically about what it is you're doing. It's not just oh, that one looks a nice one to go for. Yeah, we'll hook on to that one. This is something that you have to reflect on, maybe have conversations around, maybe kind of revisit your strategy if you have one and say, okay, is there one here that kind of feels more intuitively aligned with where we're trying to go? And that is a really good macro context on which to hook. And not every SDG is going to fit every brand. I mean, this is really, really true. Once you look at these, you will see that there are certain SDGs which align more comfortably and probably more in a focused way with certain levels of purpose and value that you have, but certain sectors and types of organization. You know, for example, health and nutrition brands would probably be aligned with the SDGs 2, which are for zero hunger, and SDG 3, which is for good health. If you're in fashion and retail, certainly SDG 12, which looks at responsible consumption, we know that one's a really sensitive issue, and maybe SDG 5 for gender equality. Those could be feeling more aligned with that sector. And if you're in, say, tech and finance, SDG 8, which is decent work, SDG 9, which is innovation, and SDG 13, climate action, could be ones that are more relevant to you. So this is not about saying, oh, when we look at all of the SDGs, yeah, one isn't really jumping out at us. It's not about feeling bad about that. It's just about thinking and feeling your way through them when you delve more deeply into them and think, okay, there's one here which actually does align with our higher purpose and it is more kind of in keeping with our sector. And there is a lot of choice. You can see from these that some of them are societal, some of them are very much about sort of doing good to planet. And they all have a slightly different nuance or a slightly different kind of focus and feel to them. So it is about sort of sitting with them and reflecting and having those conversations internally to see which one really feels like it aligns. This isn't an instant snapshot decision for most brands and most marketers. This is something you need to kind of explore and live with. And it's important work to do, this self-reflection on what our brand really stands for, what our strategies are doing, and actually where they're taking us. Those are really important things. And again, that's another value to be using the SDGs as not the end game in any sense of the word, but very much as a kind of a filter for those discussions because it opens up conversations that otherwise might just not appear on the radar as you're starting to build your plans maybe for next year, for example. So these are good things just to be using as a little checklist, a little counterbalance to some of the decision making you're doing, and just making sure that you can keep your ship on a relatively even keel. Now, when you start to have those kinds of conversations, one of the things that you'll probably find is quite useful to do is to use some kind of mapping sort of toolkit and actually maybe even applying something like the Mindful Marketing Index to measuring, stakeholder value alignment across all of the things that you're considering as you do those reflections. And what we mean by that is kind of looking at your responsible marketing strategy and thinking through the product element of it, thinking through the people element and the impact that that has on the people around you, all stakeholders within your mix of your business, as well as processes. If you find that one is about, relating to carbon footprint, for example, that could be, your next strategy. That could be the next set of tactical actions that you need to take. And if it is about almost reinventing how you define your business and the old kind of transaction of selling products and services maybe doesn't feel appropriate now as you explore these SDGs, and maybe it is more about circular business and circular economy, then certain SDGs might start to show and present themselves to you. And the ideal outcome really is identifying gaps in your branding, in your campaigns. It's avoiding, obviously, greenwashing and addressing those greenwashing risks where, if you're saying certain things and then your audience looks at that and says, oh, hold on a minute, you're aligning your strategy with all of this high level stuff, but I don't see any evidence that you're actually doing it. Then again, it's a nice check and balance that allows you to really kind of think again strategically about, okay, we need to do campaigns. We need to have new products and services to be able to provide the evidence of what we're claiming and the direction that we're going in. And it will also help to identify any potential stakeholder disconnects. And again, particularly if you're working in a broad supply chain where, you might get all your ducks in order and be able to get everything sort of flowing nicely. But then upstream and downstream, so your suppliers and your resellers, actually they're not following suit. And then so it's having those maybe potentially quite awkward conversations that says, look, we're aligning our strategy with this SDG. We've got this big mission that we're actually on this route and this roadmap towards, and we've aligned all of the things in this new marketing mix to make sure everything points in the right direction. We're gathering evidence as we go, as we roll out our products and new services, as we kind of listen to the market and we listen to our customers, and you guys aren't. And then again, it's about addressing that and saying, can we help you with that? Because we've now got this groundswell of momentum building and it's doing great in our business. We'd like to help you. We like our relationship with you as a supplier or a reseller, and we want to continue doing business with you, but you need to align with us because we're on this journey to net zero and we've got all this alignment with the SDGs. And we can see the bigger picture, and clearly you're getting distracted by the tactical day to day and you're not focusing on this bigger strategic stuff. So is there anything we can do to help you with that? Because we want to retain our relationship. And that's an important thing because once you start mapping this stuff out and once you start having those conversations, both internally with your teams, but also externally with your providers and resellers, then it will identify those disconnects. And those are the things you need to plug because those potentially are weak points in your strategy. So you can see where this kind of stuff comes into play really quite nicely, not as an answer, not as a solution to anything specifically, but as a directional kind of, let's call it a beacon. That's kind of the first word that came into my mind as I was describing that. It's probably a bit of a beacon. So the SDG that you choose is that kind of beacon of light that kind of you're pointing towards. It is that North Star that enables you to align in a very simple sense, very strategic sense with something bigger than you, greater than you as a business or organization, and just enables you to say, hey, we're not perfect, but we're on the right journey. We're going in the right kind of direction. And there are many examples of organizations who have done this. I mean, for example, Dove's Real Beauty campaign, which challenged stereotypes and was promoting body confidence, you might remember this one, directly supports SDG 5, which is gender equality, because as part of that campaign, they were representing some very diverse identities. And at the same time, again, this is the evidence base, funding gender equality initiatives. So the impact on the brand is obviously brand equity is increasing significantly in maybe some of these underrepresented audiences. And so there's a really nice, neat example of, kind of business as usual, but actually skewing it and focusing it and targeting it in a particular area for maximum impact to support an SDG. So hugely powerful, really focused, and actually at its core, very, very simple. And that's why these things can be really, really powerful because it's not overdoing it. It's not a huge amount of additional work to do this stuff, but it's really potentially quite powerful because then people get it. Soon as I say to you that that Dove campaign was all about gender equality, which is a United Nations initiative, and SDG number 5 just happens to be, then you kind of get the context of that campaign, which is really important. Another great example is IKEA, looking and focusing on responsible consumption. I mean, this is an often quoted one. They've run sort of a number of different campaigns encouraging customers to consume less and live more sustainably. This is SDG 12. It's not a thing that's in isolation. It is highly relevant, obviously, to all of us now on the planet. And they've included repair services, resale platforms, and from their own perspective, conscious product design. Now, of course, this is going to be building customer loyalty because why wouldn't you want to be buying and trading with a responsible organization like IKEA? And again, that hooking into an SDG gives that real clarity of focus. So hugely powerful and really relevant to their target audience. So at the same time as reducing product waste and building brand trust, a very measurable outcome is their increased net promoter score, that customer loyalty, customer satisfaction score. So this stuff is measurable. You know, if your organization or your management team says, oh, SDG stuff, I've kind of heard of it, don't really get it. It's a bit of a distraction for us. You can then go to them and say, well, actually, no, because there are examples of organizations who have got tangible benefit from doing this kind of alignment. So they're responsible organizations, but the alignment with these SDGs gives a hook and a confidence to their audience, which actually helps to drive business. So there's a commercial angle here, as well as a brand equity and longer term view. Oatly, some of you may well use Oatly again as another brand. Climate Action, SDG 13, a really good example here of Oatly's packaging features, carbon footprints, on their actual products so that you can actually see, which will encourage systemic change through advocacy. So they're going to be helping you to actually share the message of the work that they're doing by putting some bold claims and communication really transparently and openly on their product packaging. And life cycle data, again, real evidence backed up stuff for the climate action that they're taking. And so their climate footprint labeling aligns with this SDG indicator on emissions per product. So a really nice tangible benefit here that if you use this particular brand when you're purchasing this particular product category, you are not only aligning with probably a like-minded organization in your product purchasing, but actually you're doing greater good because it aligns further upstream to climate action at a UN level. So when people say, and we've all felt this, I'm sure, over the years, and you still hear it with certain people, friends, family, and colleagues, oh, well, it's only me. So what difference can I make? Well, again, here's another reason to align with the SDGs because this is the difference you're making. You are part of this crusade towards SDG 13 by purchasing this product. And the tangible evidence is on the packaging. So you can make a little incremental difference to a big picture item. So can you start to see how these things can become hugely powerful in the storytelling that you do? A really, really interesting new way of actually positioning what you say and how you say it. Hellman's another really good example for good health and well-being, which is SDG 3. Make Taste Not Waste campaign helps reduce food waste while promoting healthier meal habits. And this was very much launching with partnerships with food redistribution networks and charities. So kind of, doing good by the local communities that they serve, as well as reducing waste and increasing the well-being and the health of the customers they serve. So this is kind of joining up a multifaceted approach. Yes, hooking into one specific SDG, but actually saying, actually, we can see some spin-off here. We can see some spin-off benefit into some of the others. So for this example, you could say there's a lead SDG, number 3 in Hellman's example here, but actually we've got some kind of next tier down ones as well, that by doing that main one, number 3 that we're focused on, there's some others actually that we could be focused on too. Now, of course, this is going to really help to strengthen the brand and it's going to create some really innovative and really measurable behavioral change in your audience's behavior, both purchasing patterns, but also their health and well-being. And what is not nicer than that to create a longevity in terms of the customer relationship, because why would you go anywhere else than a brand who's serving planet and you? So health and well-being for the planet, as well as health and well-being for you as a customer. So when you start to integrate your chosen SDG and maybe one or two others that are kind of the layer two kind of priorities below those, and you're supporting them too, you can start to see how you can begin to story tell internally before you even take this externally. There's some really powerful storytelling to be had here. And so this is quite exciting and maybe a new way of actually doing what you do. And so we can actually align our marketing mix and how we do our stuff to the SDGs. So you can align it to your products. So this is designing potentially for impact. So developing products with a reduced environmental impact. You can focus on inclusion, accessibility, and I mentioned circularity there as well. So not just trading and selling products, but actually getting them back when they come to the end of their life and repurposing, reusing, recycling, whatever it happens to be. And there are many, many examples of organizations and brands who are doing this through their products. So that's one part of the marketing mix that the SDGs can align with. With price, you can reflect the real cost of your product pricing. So you can introduce models that show the social or environmental costs saved, much like the Oli example there. So you can actually then get people to buy into, and again, this is so, so transparent. This is a new way of doing business. It's not about keeping everything closely guarded as a secret. It's about really being open and transparent, and your customers will love you for this. And there are price calculators, or there's things like EcoChain for product cost mapping. So, there are tools and frameworks that enable you to do this stuff if this feels intuitively like a good thing for you to do and you want to take the first steps in that direction. You can also align your marketing mix place to the SDGs. So you can look at ethical distribution and reach. So choosing retail and distribution methods that reduce your carbon footprint and maybe even increase access to your products and services. And of course, if you're using something like SDG 11, which is sustainable cities, you can do localized production if that's appropriate to you. Lush is a really good example that you can search and read up about. They're using local sourcing and distribution to support community economies. So taking everything really back to their grassroots, not doing centralized stuff, but actually distributing their whole kind of supply chain, if you like, in places and ways that really support a high level SDG. So there's lots of great work that can be done here. It is about rethinking how you do what you do and just not being complacent. The thing about all of these brands that we're exploring here is that complacency is just nowhere to be seen. This is brands who are willing to reflect, rethink, innovate, and reimagine how they're doing their business. And when it comes to the promotion P in the marketing mix, you can have SDG focused messaging. So shifting from product driven to purpose driven narratives. If you've listened to any of my stuff before, you know that I am very focused on values and purpose driven marketing. I just see this as really the new currency that we're trading with. It isn't about the products and service features, because we can all, let's face it, get that from a competitor. This is about that broader, that deeper story around SDGs, the value that we have, the purpose-driven approaches that we have as an integrated organization, and communicating progress, not perfection. That's the key. This will engage your audience in long-term change and the journey or the roadmap that you're on. That is the surefire way of stimulating customer lifetime value, that CLV marketing measure that we all want to be seeing more of. If we can get better CLV through deeper, more meaningful customer relationships because they're on the journey with us. They're not just buying a product or service in the short term, they're actually on the journey because they believe in what we're trying to do. And so progress is better than perfection. Don't wait until you've done it. Share the journey that you're on. That is real and true responsible marketing aligned with the SDGs. And as you do that, you're going to want to be measuring SDG contribution. So there are, UN SDG indicators to link campaigns and measurable global outcomes. You can, for example, look at for SDG 12, reduced food waste per household. There's a simple one. You've got to translate this into obviously your world because we're all in very different organizations. So you need to kind of figure out what yours are. But, for SDG 13, you could say it's percentage of renewable materials used. For SDG 5, it could be the percentage spent with women-owned suppliers. Many of these things are kind of hidden under the hood, if you like, of the SDG. So get up close and personal with the SDG that kind of feels right. And then think about, okay, how would that actually materialize in the real world within my organization, within the way that we do business? And are there some measures? Are there some KPIs, some key performance indicators, which could help us to tell the story of the journey that we're on? Some of those things can be closely aligned with the SDG. And people love those because that's a trend. That is something you can see on a graph or on a bar chart or on a table where you can say, look, we started here then, and now we're here. We're not perfect. We're not at 100%, but look at the journey we're on. This is what we've done. And here's the evidence of how we're growing and improving. So measuring your SDG contribution, no matter how small, every little helps in the broader UN journey that's going to be helping the planet in a broader sense. So your KPIs, your impact dashboards, those are really important things to think about. So tracking things like campaign reach versus behavior change, sentiment linked to responsible brand pillars, partner engagement and policy support. And there are many, many tools out there that will enable you to kind of maybe rethink the dashboards that you report on, which are probably going to need to be more than just revenue and sales. The old model of, oh, yes, here's my dashboard, and it's like number of people visiting our website, how many likes or engagement on social media, and how many sales did we do? Okay, you're probably going to want to keep those because that's what the business understands, but start to engage with some of these too, because these are the ones that are going to make your business sustainable into the future as these become the things that actually do become those trading factors that your customers are going to be using to decide whether it's you guys or your competition down the street, because they don't care what your internal dashboards are. They want to know what's in it for them and how you're aligning with this broader picture that we're talking about. And what it will do, I mentioned a little bit earlier, this word greenwashing. What this will do is it will highlight your credible action. Some of the common pitfalls in this whole kind of scary word of greenwashing, which is a fearful thing in a lot of marketers' minds that stops them from doing stuff. But if you've got credible action, clear, transparent KPIs that are measuring against the important stuff aligned with your SDG, you're not going to be doing vague claims. You're not going to need to have, these sort of empty, unvalidated third party kind of statements. So, you're going to be actually delivering stuff that really means something. You're not going to be over promising future goals because you're reporting what's actually happening here and now. So people can identify with the present state, not this kind of vague hope that in the future you're going to be in this position, but actually where you are today. So this is proper reporting. So it's using clear targets, it's clear evidence, it's clear reporting cycles, and it's being honest and truthful. I mean, there's nowhere to hide in this game, by the way. I mean, you're probably sort of feeling this right now, is that this is really open, honest, and true. And yes, it is. This is what we need to be doing. This is the new way of creating credibility. And of course, with that and mentioning third party validations there, you do have the opportunity to get some really credible collaboration going here. You could collaborate with certified B Corps. You could get involved with the UN Global Compact members. You could see who your local NGOs and SDG aligned suppliers might be. A lot of brands are now starting to align with these like-minded companies. They're not necessarily taking those old relationships forward because they don't really serve this new purpose that they're working to. So maybe some harsh decision making has to happen to enable you to do this properly. It might not be today, this might be tomorrow once you get started, but there are lots of examples of organizations who have taken the leap of faith. Pucker Herbs, again, working with Fair Wild to ensure ethical sourcing, which aligns with SDG 15, life on land. So there's lots of different ways that you can sort of use this to storytell within the organization to get those conversations started as to actually, are we still aligned with the right organizations and partners? And do we have to go down the route of maybe even going down the B Corp route ourselves if we're going to be taken seriously in our initiatives? And what we're looking for here is using marketing drivers to see and support a systemic change, really. Because what we're saying here is that we are very supportive of shifts in broader government policy, in the political system. We're not going to just take, as it's always been, as a de facto standard for looking forward. We're actually going to challenge the system. We're actually going to look at how society is shifting, how our customers are shifting, how certain sectors are not looking to do business like they used to, and see how and where we can start to have some influence. And it doesn't mean you have to be out there necessarily lobbying and doing some of the stuff that a lot of the things that you see in the media, and a lot of the brands that are some of the flagships in this area are doing. You don't necessarily have to go that far, but actually having a position and actually being able to back it up with evidence, having some policies, starting maybe to play these out in your conversations, maybe in social media, or maybe in some of the communities that you integrate and act in. Maybe that is a good sort of testing ground for some of these things, because when you start to see as an organization that this is important narrative, these are important conversations internally and externally, you are by default becoming a more responsible business. It's exciting, it's a little bit scary in equal measure, but it does enable you to have these conversations started. So, with internal engagement, what you're looking to do here really is to begin to align some of your teams on the SDGs. I mean, obviously, quite a few people won't even understand what the SDGs are, but after your research, you're going to know. You're going to be able to say, okay, well, here they all are. Here's a big list of them. In fact, let's look at the UN's SDG kind of website, because there's a lot of detail in there that you could share. You can download lots of the assets and resources and train your teams on these global goals and frameworks. Start to use SDG language in briefs, presentations, and maybe integrate them with some of your planning cycles. Don't let this moment pass you by. It doesn't have to be a deep dive necessarily. That you can do this to start with at quite a surface level, just to become familiar and test out how receptive the organization is, and start locally. Start with your colleagues. Start to bring that into your monthly meetings before maybe taking it to some of the bigger planning meetings later. It's exciting, it's important, but it is so relevant to the conversations today. And start your storytelling aligned with the global goals, because authentic human stories do connect your campaigns to SDG outcomes. As much as I've kind of tried to give you this kind of big picture here, it was when we were talking about those examples of brands who were doing it with specific SDGs that I'm sure for you it became real, it became alive. And so focusing on community voices and case studies and evidence is the best way to bring these SDGs to life. So you can do your research with the one that you choose, because it would be a simple thing. Get your favorite AI to go out there and do some research, deep research on other brands that are using SDG X, whichever one you choose, to do business in our sector or more broadly. And you'll get some great case studies and examples that will help you to story tell, both internally to start with, but then maybe a little further outside your organization. We're not talking about customers yet. We're talking just on the kind of edge of your organization. So your influencers, your media partnerships, your agencies, the people who serve you and who you serve, and partner with creators aligned to social or environmental missions that are similar to yours. Ensure that your values align. You're not just looking for the person with the biggest reach or the biggest noise at the moment. What we're looking for now is that we're really looking to partner and engage with like-minded souls. That's what this is all about. And there are many platforms available that enable you to do this. And it's a really interesting thing, because, platforms like Influencity have got actually ESG filters built into them. So you can actually say, look, if we're looking for this particular influencer, let's just put the filter in and just make sure that they're aligned with our brand values before you make contact. And so this should become part and parcel of your everyday thinking. And of course, the more you do this as a responsible marketer, as a responsible business, the more this just becomes a really good and productive habit. Because then you start to trade and think in terms of value and purpose and your higher level chosen SDG. It becomes just the way you do business, and it helps as a filter for all of your decision making. So start, if you can, to build that momentum. And what we're looking to see really here are this kind of alignment is because it may well be that you become the leader in your sector or the leader in your network or your community. It may well be that your competition actually aren't doing anything like this yet. And so you become the leading light in this. And what we're seeing generally is if you're in B2C, the focus generally is on lifestyle relevance and behavior change. If you're in B2B, it's probably on procurement, compliance, and shared value. And there are lots of examples that you can focus on at, again, a higher level, which will maybe start to help you to align your chosen SDG with your storytelling. And so we're seeing this play out in many, many sectors, but it's not a full and crowded space. So the fact you're here now listening to this and maybe thinking and reflecting and taking notes for yourself gives you an opportunity to strike now while the iron's hot. Your competitors probably aren't doing this. So there's an opportunity for differentiation, for maybe even creating a USP. And it gives you an opportunity as well, then maybe to trade more broadly, maybe to open up new sectors that you couldn't necessarily access before. Maybe this opens up new conversations with new geographies, new markets that you didn't otherwise serve, because now in the storytelling, you're getting relevant beyond your initial products and services to a new audience. So this could be opening up a customer journey and an engagement opportunity with new customers to build new relationships, allowing you to even potentially pivot what it is you do. So if growth is on your strategy or your targets, then maybe, just maybe, this is an opportunity to do it. So the roadmap, how do you take this now forward? We've kind of covered obviously lots of different ways that you can start to think about this and a few examples of brands who are already on their roadmap towards achieving this. So the roadmap really is to identify maybe 3 to 5 SDGs that could be aligned to your brand and then focus those down into maybe choosing one that you're going to run with and test. Map your campaigns using something like the SDG Compass, for example, and align your messaging, your media, and your products with your selected goals. You obviously have, as we've said earlier, to include some KPIs, so measure and report using some of these global indicators. You've got your little checklist now of some of the things that you can do. And again, maybe rethink your dashboard of reporting and partner to increase credibility and influence and test out your existing relationships. This isn't about tearing up your kind of rule book at the moment and starting from afresh. It's exploring and having those conversations and to see who is willing to come on the journey with you to being a responsible organization and aligned with the SDGs. So, final reflections, just to kind of round this off and hopefully send you on this journey of discovery, is to think that really marketing has the tools to shape not just demand, but a better world. That is honestly what we're really trying to do here. This is at the core of responsible marketing. It isn't just to be a lead gen magnet. It isn't just to hook in the audience and get them, aware of our products and services. It's to do things for the right reason. It is to do all of that, but it's to do it for the right reason. And this is the higher purpose that will help us to build a better world, not encouraging consumption for consumption's sake, but for doing the right kind of circularity in business that we do. The SDGs do offer a universal framework that will help to guide our action, our accountability at the highest level, and focus our ambition. So they are really, really powerful. They are a lever to get into conversations that you might not otherwise have had. But the final reflection really is to start with what you can control. So that is probably getting some conversations started. And wherever you can, influence what you can. You are not going to solve this. This is not an end game to be achieved. This is a roadmap and a journey on which you can have a lot of fun, a lot of really powerful and meaningful engagement, and actually start to realize that purpose and those values that you have in your strategy. And that is how you become a responsible organization doing responsible marketing aligned with the SDGs.